Hello and welcome to Tech Deals How-To Guide, how to install additional RAM and a solid-state drive, including the clone process in this $700 CyberPower PC gaming computer. I've previously reviewed this computer, link in the description below, as well as links to Windows Performance Review, Game Performance Reviews. This thing is a great computer. Now in this video today, I'm going to be showing you how to upgrade the RAM from the 8 gigabytes that it comes with to a total of 16 gigabytes, as well as showing you how to physically install this Crucial Technologies 480 gigabyte solid-state drive into the computer next to the existing hard drive. We're keeping it, as well as how to copy or clone Windows 10 from the hard drive to the solid-state drive without having to reinstall Windows or your programs. Now, I'm going to trim this video here in a second. We're going to go to a vertical shot so you can see the physical installation of the parts. And then when that is finished, we'll be back here to show you that the RAM was successfully installed, and I'll show you how to get Windows from the hard drive, where it currently is now, onto the solid-state drive. So let's go take a look at the install process. And we're back. I have the computer on its side. I have got the cover off of the computer to show you the inside of it. We are now going to do two upgrades, but before we do that, I'll go ahead and take the time to explain what you're looking at. This is the open side of your computer. This fan right here covers your Intel processor. This is the Intel i5 6402P processor. These are your two existing sticks of memory. These are 4 gigabytes each, giving you a total of 8. We'll be adding 2 more to the open slots for a total of 16. This is your video card, the AMD RX 480 video card. This is a power cable, a PCI Express 6-pin connector, providing power directly from the power supply because this video card is a high-end video card that requires lots of power. You can see several cables here. This provides the USB ports on the front of your machine. This provides power from the power supply. It's running behind the motherboard in a separate space back there. And then these two cables, which you can barely see, provide data to the DVD burner, which is right here. You can't see it. It's inside this storage bay. That's the DVD drive in the front. And then the hard drive, which is right down here. There is an exhaust cooling fan back here, which is really nice. And then there are 2 intake fans in the front, which when the machine is turned on, the red LEDs you're seeing in the front are those cooling fans. Underneath this is your power supply, and I'll go ahead and take it off to put the power supply on video so you can see it. It is protected by a single thumb screw, and it simply slides off like so. That is a high power 600 watt switching power supply. So basically that'll support anything from 100 volts up to 240 volts. So it'll work anywhere in the world, and it provides all the power you need, not just for this video card, but for future video cards as well. I've mentioned this machine is highly upgradable. There is a second PCI Express power connector here to provide you with more power if you need it. And there's a separate dongle here for an 8-pin. So basically you can put these together to give you a single 8-pin PCI Express power connector if you need it. The first thing we're going to do is install our RAM. Now I have the RAM right here. Something I want you to notice, I'll take one out of the plastic to show you. Now, the label itself is not important. This happens to be Crucial Memory by Micron. That's just the brand. The golden fingers along the bottom, there is a notch that is not quite halfway down. There's a little bit less space on this side than there is on this side. That's because the memory can only be installed in one direction. That notch is in a different place on DDR4 versus DDR3, DDR2, etc. Each type of memory put the notch in a different place, so you cannot install them in the incorrect slot. In addition, you'll see that from here to here, the memory is actually longer than it is on the ends. This is a DDR4 exclusive. If you're looking at memory and it's smooth, it's the same length all the way across. It's DDR3 or older, not DDR4. There's nothing on the back. Now, these you generally want to install in pairs, and of course I have 2 of them. If you look on the motherboard, there is the notch. There is less space on the bottom. That's the bottom of the computer. This is the top. There is less space on the bottom than there is on the top. And there are these white tabs on either end that need to be pushed out manually to give room for the memory to be installed. So on both of them, I'm going to use my finger. It's not hard. You just push them out. That's because when we insert the memory, they should pop in automatically. Sometimes they don't if it's a really tight fit. It depends on the motherboard. If not, you'll have to push them in. But make sure you push the RAM all the way down. Line the memory up with the notch on the correct side. There are two guide grooves, one here and one here, that you're going to insert the ends of the memory module in. It goes in straight, just like so. And it will rest on top of the slot, but it's not in yet. It's still resting on the memory slot. You want to take two fingers on either end and you want to put straight pressure down. Some systems will take more pressure than others, but it shouldn't bend the motherboard. There we go. So I push it in and you saw, or you may have seen, the two tabs pop in automatically. I didn't push those in, they went in automatically. We'll take our second stick of memory. And again, I will align it so the short end is on the short end. I will put it in vertically. There we go. Just gently tap it in. Now again, it's still sitting on the memory socket, but I will push down on both ends with both fingers. And if it's easier, you can do one end at a time. These are long enough. And you notice all of the memory tabs are lined up. They might need a little bit of help. There we go. If you need to use your fingers to make sure they go all the way in, they should easily, without any pressure, go in because there are tabs. If you ever want to remove memory, you reverse the process. I'll just take one of the red ones out to show you. Push down on the end tabs and it pops the memory right out. This just happens to be the memory from ADATA that was provided with this CyberPower PC. Interestingly enough, they provided DDR4 2400. I installed DDR4 2133. Does it matter? No. This isn't running at 2400, it's running at 2133. The B150 motherboard, in fact, this is an MSI B150M Bazooka motherboard. That's just the model from MSI. This doesn't support over 2133 anyway, so it doesn't matter what you put in here. They put this in probably because they got it cheap and inexpensive. The red is just a heat spreader. It just looks nice. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be there. If you want it to match, by all means, buy similar memory that matches. To insert it, we just line it back up with the slots, push it down, and it snaps right into place. Now, if you're watching this video because the only thing you wanted to see was the memory being installed, you're done. There's no configuration. Put the cover back on, plug all the cables back in, boot into Windows, boom. You've got 16 gigabytes of RAM. You are completely finished. If you wish to install a solid-state drive, that's what we're going to do next. First things first. Over here, we've got two removable drive trays. The hard drive is installed in the top one, which you can just see the top of the hard drive right here. The bottom one is empty. It opens up by simply pulling up on this quick release tab and it slides right out. What's nice about these drive trays, let's see if I can hold this up close so you can see. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are screw holes right in the center. That's where we're going to install our solid-state drive. If you wanted to add a 3.5-inch hard drive, there are toolless tabs on either side. You can simply bend this out a bit, drop a 3.5-inch drive in, which will pop into the screw holes, and then you are good to go. If it's too tight of a fit, these actually pop out like so. You can put the drive in, and then you can put these into place and then slide them in depending upon how tight of a fit you have and how much you want to bend it. So those are removable, but we're not going to use them at all because we have a 2.5-inch drive. Note, screws do not come with this, and most SSDs don't come with drive screws. This is all that came inside the box. This particular Crucial SSD that I'm using, the only thing in here besides the serial number for the cloning software was this. A plastic spacer. The only reason you'd use this is in a laptop computer that expects a 9.5 millimeter thick drive. This is a 7, I think that's a 7 millimeter thick drive. We're not going to use that. And then a sticker for your case, which actually that came from RAM, that didn't even come from this. So, I don't know why that was in there. This solid state drive does not come with drive screws. You will need drive screws. I will put a link in the video description below to drive screws. Unfortunately, it's going to be a few dollars because it doesn't make sense to buy them online and just get 4 of them. The drive screws I'll put one on the end of my screwdriver to show you what it looks like. They are very small threads, and hopefully the camera will focus on that. I should probably take a photograph and zoom in on it, but I'm not quite there yet. So it's a very, very thin screw. Look in the video description below. Click on the link to Amazon. You get like 100 of them or something. More, you'll get a lifetime supply for a few dollars. If you have drive screws, you certainly don't need them. But what I'm going to do is turn this over, and I'm going to place the drive upside down with the 4 screw holes. You want to make sure your drive connectors are facing out. Don't turn it like this because you can't plug it in. And you'll notice the drive screws line up with the 4 holes perfectly. Our connectors are facing out. So when we insert, and it turns around like this, when we insert it this way, the cables will be available to the back. Now you might say, wait a minute, how am I going to plug it in way back there? Aha! The cover comes off both sides. When we're done with this, I'll trim it again. I'll flip this over and I'll edit that part out. But I'll flip the case over and take the other side off and show you how we're going to plug those cables in. But the first thing we need to do is put our drive screws in. This doesn't take nearly as long as it does for me to film it because I'm talking and explaining through everything. Once you've done it a few times, this only takes a couple of minutes. So we just have to put our 4 drive screws in here. There we go. Don't do this over your computer. If you drop the screw into your case, it's a pain to get out. I'm doing it over so you can see me film it. Do this on the table. Don't do this over your computer. Do as I say and not as I do. You probably aren't trying to film it. One more. Now, interestingly enough, solid-state drives are just flash drives. They're just memory chips. There's no moving parts. Could you just take the SSD and just put it in here and just plug it in? To be honest with you, you could. The problem is if you move your machine or it touches something else or it touches the power supply, I mean, it'll probably be fine if you never move it. But honestly, for a couple of bucks, get the drive screws and do it properly. All we do at this point is, now that it's properly secured, you can see our drive connectors. The big one is the power, the small one is the data. We just put it back in the slot, and it snaps right in place. Now, you see here I do have a data cable. These also do not come with the solid-state drives, and the computer did not come with an extra one, so you'll need one of these as well. I will put a link to a pair of these or 1 or 2 of these in the video description below. If you've got one, by all means use it. If not, be sure to order one with your solid-state drive. I am now going to turn this over. We'll be back in a second when it's on the other side. And we're back. Now this is what it looks like on the back side of the motherboard and the other side of the computer case taken off. This is the side that has no window on it. Normally you would never open this side, but in this case, if you look right down here, you'll see the back of the solid-state drive we just added, and you'll see the back of the hard drive with the power and the data cable. Now, we need to provide power for the solid-state drive. If you look at the power cable for the hard drive and follow it, you'll notice there is another power cable, also a serial ATA power cable, but you'll note that they've got zip ties tying it off, so we can't move anything. This is why I have my handy toolkit over here. This is a 26-piece VisionTech toolkit that I bought for, it was $20 or something on Amazon. It's very handy because it's got very small screwdrivers, tweezers for picking up drop things, needle nose pliers, a ratchet set, and most importantly, my cutters. Now you can use scissors or something else to cut these, but I have these, and so I'm going to use them. Cut the zip tie off. The other thing that in my tool chest is a handy pack of cable ties, also bought on Amazon. I buy everything on Amazon, what can I say? 200 cable ties, it's like $5 or $10 for a billion cable ties that will last you the rest of your life. They're good to have if you work on computers. Now, having cut this tie off, I want you to notice, now, I mean, you may have to detangle depending on how they have it plugged in, because these cables go to the front. Okay, what I'm going to do, these just pull off, there's no latches. This is the power cable I just pulled straight up, that pulls straight on, straight off. The data cable has a latch, but the power cable does not. The reason I pulled it off was to detangle. There we go. In fact, I'll detangle that from there. Will it reach? No. Oh boy, okay. So basically they've got all the cables. Now this is a good thing. This is how it should be built. So kudos to CyberPower for tying all this off and not leaving it flopping around. My problem is I don't have enough cable. Will it pull through? It might, and I can avoid cutting those. Not quite. Well, I'm going to have to cut them. But again, I have replacement zip ties. I will retie this when we're done. So I do have to cut these off. By the way, if anybody wonders what the red is, I have tape on my arm because I sprained my wrist the other day. So I just have my arm wrapped in tape. That stuck out a couple times in case anybody's curious. Yes, I'm fine. It just better to tape it up. There we go. I didn't want to pull. I could have probably pulled harder and maybe pulled it out, but you don't want to break anything. Better to cut the ties and then redo it. So I'm untangling the power cord. This is 2 serial ATA power connectors. They only go on one way. There's a small L notch right here. So what I'm going to do is line up this one with the solid state drive, and I'm going to push it down until it clicks into place. Well, there we go. So we now have power to the serial ATA drive. And then, is that lined up? Yes. Doing this while keeping the camera in place is the trick. So this is just pushed this way. These are nicely wrapped. This is actually a good power supply. These are wrapped in mesh to protect the wires. So we've now got power back to the hard drive and to the solid state drive. Awesome. Now this is the data cable to the hard drive. Well, we don't have to move that. There's no need to move that. But we need to put a data cable on the solid state drive. Enter our data cable. And the nice thing about it being blue is once we put it through on the other side, it's awfully hard to confuse which one is our solid state drive. These are metal retention tabs. Basically, when you plug it in, it should snap into place, and to disconnect it, you just have to push down that metal tab and then pull out. If you try to pull out otherwise, you'll break the tab off, and that would be bad. Also, this is L-shaped, straight across, and then there's an L. And if you look on the drive, there's also a notch, and so it only goes in one way. Click into place. I am going to take this and bring it here, and I'm just going to, for the moment, stick it through this hole. The reason is we can't really plug it in without flipping the computer back over. So what I want to do is I want to retie everything because currently it's a mess. So I will open up my case of ties. I will pull out, you know what, just for fun. No, those are too short. I need long ones this time. I will pull out 2 long zip ties. How do I want to tie this up? Cable management is important. You don't want the cables flopping around your case and it affects airflow. And besides, it looks nice. So these I will put a tie around this. Now, zip ties are one-time use, and the cutters are handy because you want to cut the excess off. And then this won't go back because I shortened it. So instead, sorry for my head getting in the way, it does that. I want to loop this over. And I'll tie it like this. There we go. So that's not going anywhere. Now this cable is still loose on this end because I'm going to plug it into the motherboard, but I've done a moderately decent job of making sure this is tied up. We're good to go. At this point, I'm going to put the cover back on, flip it back over, and we're going to show you the other side. Okay, we have now turned our computer over. I have placed the cover back on the other side, which is why you can't see the table through here. These holes actually would go all the way straight through. This is where we put our cable through. This is the other side of the computer case. That's on. We flipped it back over. So you can see we have access to our data cable for our solid state drive. These two black cables right here are actually the data cables going to the hard drive and to the DVD burner. There are ports under this video card which you cannot see. If I was just doing this myself, I actually can reach under here and plug it in, but I want you to be able to see it. I'm trying to film this. So I'm also going to take the time to show you how to remove your video card. First thing is there is a tab under here on the power. You have to push it in and this comes right out. The tab is right here and that's all there is to it. It's a small tab. Take the power from there. You will need a screwdriver to undo the one screw holding the video card to the back of the case. And then on the motherboard itself is a white tab which you may or may not be able to see right here. You do have to push that down until it snaps and then the video card comes straight out. And you can see our RX 480 graphics card. Very nice. I'll set that down right here and now you can properly see our motherboard. There's our socket. This is that white tab I was telling you about. When you reinsert your card, make sure this is not up. Make sure that is down. When you push the card in, this will pop up automatically, just like the memory slot tabs. So make sure that's pushed down. Now you can see where the data cable for the hard drive and the DVD burner are plugged in, and next to it you see this. Now that actually says SATA Express, Serial ATA Express. That's fine. What that means is that's designed for a standard which never took off. There are 4 standard serial ATA ports here and then an extension port for SATA Express. You can safely ignore that. This plugs in, you see our retention tab, into any of these ports. It really doesn't matter which one, just like that. Now to remove it, you do have to push this tab down. If you try to pull it out otherwise, it isn't going anywhere. If by chance you were installing an additional drive or anything else, you've got 3 more serial ATA ports here to install more drives, although you really only have 1 more drive bay right here. Note, this is a Cooler Master case. If you look, you'll see some drive screw holes right here. I am willing to bet that this case probably can accommodate an additional drive tray. I actually, off the top of my head, don't know what the model number of this is. I could look it up if anybody cares. Does it say on the back? It does. It does not, actually. It's a Cooler Master something or other, and I'll bet you could put additional drive trays in here. In any case, moving on. Take our video card, line it up, and I don't know if you could hear the click on my microphone, but that popped up automatically. The retention tab on the motherboard, we screw it back in. Now, if you can reach under here, you could easily reach under here and insert this yourself. You don't have to take your video card out to do it. I simply did it to demonstrate A, how to take it out, and B, so you could visually see it. Note, these two come together in the future. If you need an 8-pin PCI Express power connector, there you go. If you need a 6-pin plus an 8-pin, there you go. So this computer will accommodate an even more powerful graphics card if you wish to upgrade in the future. Now, our solid-state drive is installed. We have power to it. We have data to the motherboard. Our RAM is installed. We are complete. I will now put the cover back on, and we will be back in a second with the computer on the table, and then we will turn it on. And welcome back. So that is how to physically install the additional 8 gigabytes of system RAM and the solid-state drive into this computer. The first thing, if you want to verify that the RAM is installed, is in Windows, we're fully booted up here, come down to your task tray, right-click on the taskbar and choose Task Manager. It's third up from the bottom. When you click Task Manager, it may come up and look like this, or it may come up and look like this. If it looks like this, click the More Details button, and it will look like this. On the top, click the second tab over from the left, where it says Performance, and you want to click on Memory, and we now have 16 gigabytes of RAM installed. Wonderful. Now I will do a Windows performance review with this, showing the difference with the RAM and the SSD in another video. That'll be linked below, but for the moment, the RAM is working just fine. That's fairly straightforward. If you look below the memory, you'll see there's now a disk 0 and a disk 1, with disk 1 having the C next to it. Disk 1 is actually the hard drive, and it actually says Toshiba, and that's our 1 terabyte hard drive. Windows is still on our hard drive. We haven't done anything yet. But disk 0 is the SSD with no drive letter. It's blank. There's nothing on it. If you look at the small print, it says CT480BX200. CT stands for Crucial Technology. The 480 is the 480 gigabytes, and the BX200 is the model number of this particular solid-state drive. How do we get Windows from the hard drive to the solid-state drive? That's a great question. Using the included free cloning software. Now, there's no CD in the box. You have to download it, but they provide you with a serial code. And so what you're going to do, now, every SSD, you may not buy this SSD. You may buy a different one. I will have in the video description below linked SSDs from Newegg and Amazon to pick from. Generally, the good brands, ADATA, PNY, Crucial, Samsung, which are the main ones I'd recommend, all provide some form of free cloning software. It may not look exactly like this, but it will work like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to open our favorite web browser, and I'm going to go to the address they provide, which is crucial.com/ACRONIS. Sorry, my eyes are getting older. I have to look closer at it. I don't know how to pronounce it. Acronis? Acronis? I'll just call it True Image HD. How about that? Let me select my language. I speak English. And there it is. It's now downloading on the bottom. So this software is provided for free by Crucial. Now, different companies, again, provide different software. Once this is finished, we have to install it. This software will clone or copy everything on the hard drive to the SSD. Now, one question you may ask is, wait a minute, doesn't this computer come with a 1 terabyte hard drive? And isn't this less than a 1 terabyte SSD? How's it going to fit a terabyte onto this? Good question. It will shrink the free space to fit. Now, note, this only works if you have enough free space to fit. If you have filled up your hard drive, it's not going to be able to move it over. You'll have to free up enough space in order to have less than 480 gigabytes for it to copy it over, and it will shrink the free space. Otherwise, it works fine. That's something to think about. If you decide to buy maybe a 240 or 120 gig drive to save on some money, keep in mind you can't have more data than that on the hard drive, or the cloning software doesn't work. You can close your web browser now. Here's the install process. If you've never done it, it certainly can sound intimidating to clone Windows to a new drive. It's automated. This really is just a few mouse clicks, and I'm showing this. The hard part was putting it in the computer. That's really honestly the challenge. This part is basically following menu prompts. But I'm showing you because it takes the mystery out of it. And it's installing on the hard drive. Now, once it's cloned, and I will show you how to switch it around so that it boots from the SSD. It won't by default. You have to change that in the system BIOS. But once it boots to the SSD, at the end of this video, I will show you how to format the hard drive so you can use it for your own programs. We'll wipe it clean, and you'll be able to install your games or your music, movies, and other files on the hard drive. And then you can uninstall this program once that's done to free up space, because this will be on the SSD too. There we go. Start application. Get started. Now, you do have to register. There is a serial code on this paper. Everyone is different, which is why my fingers are covering it. I'm going to trim this out because obviously I'm not going to put all this in on camera. But when you come back from the cut, I will have created the account. Just basically set up your account, put in your information, put in the serial code, and then you'll go on to the next screen. And we're back. Once you create your account and put in the serial code, this is the very next screen that appears after that. All you have to do at this point is take the very first option on the list, clone disk. There's a number of features in this program. We're not going to use any of them except clone disk. And it's scanning the drives to see what you have. Automatic. Unless you have a specific reason to choose manual, just choose automatic. Your life will be much easier. We'll hit next. It's thinking about it again. Here we go. Source disk is disk 2 and target disk is disk 1. The before image shows, the very top list shows a completely unallocated empty drive, 447.1 gigabytes. Now, why is it 447.1 gigabytes instead of 480? Windows counts drives differently than drive companies sell them. This is true for all drives. The 1 terabyte drive in here, Windows sees as a 930 gigabyte drive instead of a 1000 gigabyte drive. It's just how it works. So that's completely normal. After it shows that there'll be the partitions, it'll become the C drive. There's nothing to change. Basically, you run the program, put in your serial key, register, click clone disk, choose automatic, and click proceed. That's pretty easy. Now, computer restart is required. That's because it cannot clone the drive while in Windows. It cannot make an exact copy of Windows while Windows is running because other programs are running, swap files are running. So it reboots into a special mode. When your system restarts, on this particular system, you need to press F11 when it reboots. And that will load up the boot screen. And the reason why is you have to manually intervene. I'm pressing F11 repeatedly, and here's our boot list. You will notice that we have Windows Boot Manager on the Toshiba hard drive as the default. If you don't press F11, it'll just boot back into Windows. You'll never get the clone loading. But look what's directly beneath it. I don't know how to pronounce it, the True Image software. Use the arrow key to get on one and press enter. And look what we have here. This is a safety feature built into the BIOS of modern motherboards. They won't load something else before Windows as a security feature. This way, a virus or malware doesn't intercept the Windows boot process and insert something that Windows can't detect, that Windows Defender can't detect. You, of course, can do it manually by pressing F11 and manually selecting it, but generally you're only going to do that if you know what you're doing, like watching a video such as this. At this point, it's completely automated. There's nothing for you to do, but this is an example of why I film these rather than just tell you about it, because in a modern machine like this, you'd follow the steps, you'd run the clone software, it would say, okay, we need to restart, you'd click restart, the system would reboot, and you'd end up back in Windows and you'd go, okay, now what? Rest assured, the first time I did this, it took me a little bit of fiddling too to go, okay, how do we get this done? And eventually I just realized you had to hit the F11 key to load the boot manager to select the loader. When this is done and when it's cloned, we will have to go back into the BIOS because we have to change the boot order. When this clone finishes, if we don't go back in the BIOS, it'll still boot to the hard drive. It's not going to boot to the solid-state drive until we reverse the boot order in the BIOS. I will show you how to do it when this is over. It's currently copying the partitions. This is going to take about 20 minutes or so. I'm not going to film all of this because who wants to watch a progress bar for 20? It says 7 minutes, but there's multiple partitions. I'm going to trim this video here, and we'll be back when this is finished. And the clone process has completed, and the system has automatically shut down. Not a problem. That took about 20 minutes. We're going to turn the computer back on and press delete to go into the BIOS. Why do we need to go into the BIOS? We need to switch the boot order of the drives. So I'm pressing delete repeatedly to get into the system BIOS, and here we are. At this point, you need to come back over to the boot tab, and you need to come down to not the fix first boot option because that's currently set to the Windows Boot Manager. You need to come all the way down to UEFI hard disk drive boot priorities, press enter, and change it to the solid state drive. Save and exit, save changes and reboot. And this should boot us right into the SSD. Well, that was quicker. That's a lot quicker. Solid state drives, you gotta love them. Let's see what our task manager says. And our C drive is now the SSD. Very, very, very nice. Perfect. What more do you want? Now, If you look carefully, you will notice that our disk 1, our Toshiba drive, no longer has a drive letter attached to it. Why? Well, you cannot boot both drives up as your boot drive in Windows. So the hard drive is currently hidden. It's not available to store data on because it's currently hidden from the system because Windows is actually on both the SSD and the hard drive. Not to worry, let me show you how to fix that. You're going to go to the Start menu and type in Computer Management. Computer Management has a tool called Disk Management built into it. When you open Computer Management, on the left-hand side of the screen, if you look down, you'll see under Storage, you'll see Disk Management. Under Disk Management, we can see both of the drives that are currently attached to the system. Disk 0 is our SSD, that's our 480 gig drive. You can see there is the letter C attached to its main partition. You'll notice each of the drives actually has 3 partitions. The 2 small ones in the beginning are just Windows Service protected partitions. Don't worry about those. The one we care about is this one, 930.96 gigabytes. That used to be where Windows was installed. That is our hard drive. The system is booted fine to the solid-state drive. What we're going to do at this point is we're going to right-click on that partition and choose Delete. Make sure you're doing your hard drive and not the SSD, not the one marked with the C. Actually, it probably won't let you because Windows is currently running on it. We'll hit Delete Partition. Deleting this volume will erase all data on it. Back up any data you want to keep before deleting. Do you want to continue? Yes. Now it says Unallocated. Right-click on there and choose New Simple Volume. You can basically accept all of the defaults here. It will automatically take all the available space. At this point, it wants to assign a drive letter. The reason it's chosen E is because C is your hard drive, D is actually your DVD drive, so E becomes the hard drive. Format this volume with the following settings. Now, by default, the volume label is New Volume. I'm going to call it Data. Why? It makes it easier to identify for me. And that's it. Otherwise, you accept the defaults. This just takes a few seconds. And it's complete. You can now close Computer Management, open Windows File Explorer, go down to this PC. Your local disk C is where Windows is installed. 418 gigabytes free of 446. And then the data drive E is 930 gigabytes of available hard drive space. You can now install your games or movies or music. So now we have both drives. While this, a 480 gigabyte SSD is going to run you in the fall of 2016 about $100 or so. Check out the links in the description. Check prices at Newegg and Amazon. But for that $100, keep in mind you don't lose the hard drive. You gain the SSD, you gain half a terabyte of SSD. Put your most frequently installed games on the SSD. Put maybe less frequently played games on the hard drive if you need the space. Otherwise, you have the hard drive available for pictures, documents, movies, etc. Those type of things don't matter. They don't need the SSD. Don't waste the space. So we've added space. We've kept the hard drive. Awesome. I hope this video was helpful to you in showing you how to install RAM and an SSD into this computer. Like the video if you like it. Don't if you don't. Remember to subscribe to my channel. The big huge red button right down there. If you've already subscribed, thanks. But if not, that's how you get notifications of future how-to guides, performance reviews, unboxings, and all sorts of really cool videos. Questions and comments in the comment section below. And again, remember my video description, links to all my reviews, links to Amazon where I bought this computer, killer deal for about $700-ish. Links to RAM and SSD upgrade options at both Amazon and Newegg are down there as well. Please go check those out. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.